This is continuing coverage and the trial of Richard Merritt from the Hidden Killers podcast on the True Crime Today network.
Remain seated. Court is in order.
Why don't you bring your witness in?
Yes.
You come on. All the way to the chair.
If you bring the jury in.
It's how I'm presenting the evidence.
This one is.
Yes, I have
No, but you explain, right, I understand that, you present your evidence, but you explain the screen that's not admitted. So why are you showing it now?
so that I can click on the evidence that I intend to present while she is on the stand.
Yeah, no problem with that, but I guess it doesn't have to be broadcast to all the screens right now. Broadcast to all the screens, that's what.
Okay.
Right, I understand, right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
You all may be seated.
Okay. Janine Caruso Minicosi. You want me to spell my whole name? Caruso, Caruso.
Good morning, Ms. Minicosi. What is your relationship to the defendant, Richard Merritt?
I'm his ex-wife.
And how long were you married?
19 years.
I want to talk about you for a little bit. Where do you live? Just kind of around what area of town?
I live in Marietta. I live in East Cobb.
Are you from this area originally?
I grew up in Metro Atlanta, yes.
And what kind of work do you do?
I'm a small animal veterinarian.
And do you have a practice?
I work at a practice in Vinings. Yeah.
And when did you and the defendant get married?
May of 1999.
How did you all meet?
We met at the University of Georgia when I was a freshman and he was a sophomore.
Did you both graduate from University of Georgia?
We did.
And where did the defendant go to law school?
He went to law school at Mississippi College in Jackson.
Okay. Are you all Georgia fans?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have children together?
We do. We have 2 children.
What are their names and ages?
We have an 18-year-old son named Jackson, and I have a 16-year-old daughter named Mia.
Can you just briefly tell us a little bit about your kids? Is Jack in high school?
Jack is graduating high school on Monday. And my daughter, my 16-year-old daughter, will be starting high school in the fall. She's about to be 17. She is disabled. She has cerebral palsy. She's a delightful child. Yeah.
And when you were married to the defendant, what kind of work did he do?
He was an attorney, but not when we first got married.
When did he become an attorney?
He became an attorney quite some time after he graduated. It took him 3 times to pass the bar.
Okay. And did he work for a firm?
He worked for many firms.
All right. Did he? What kind of law did he practice?
He practiced many different kinds of law over the years. He had a lot of different jobs at a lot of different firms doing different things.
Prior to losing his license, what was he doing?
He had his own private practice prior to losing his license.
Okay. And how was that funded?
When he started his practice, how was it funded? His mother gave him all of the money that he needed to start his law practice.
All right. And how long were you all married?
19 years.
When you and the defendant were married, what kind of lifestyle did you live?
We lived, I guess, what you could call like a fun jet-setting lifestyle. We had really good childcare, so we were able to travel a lot. We went a lot of places. We had a lot of fun. We had a lot of friends. We were very social. We had parties often.
Were your kids in private school?
My son was in private school up through 8th grade, and Mia was always in public school because she needed special education because of her disability.
All right. And what were the reasons that you divorced the defendant?
I divorced my ex-husband when I found out about his double life and his crimes and what he had done to all those people and what he had done to us.
And specifically, what was that?
What did he do to us?
Yes.
Let's see. He didn't pay our mortgage for 6 months, so we lost our home. At the time of his arrest, January of 2018, we lost our electricity because he hadn't paid the bill. I had a van that I used to transport my daughter and her wheelchair, and he pawned the van, so I lost my car.
Is there any relevance to this?
Your Honor, I didn't expect the question to go quite that deeply, so we'll move on.
Sustain the objection.
Judge Moon, strike.
Strike what?
Strike the testimony as being non-responsive to the question.
Well, I think the testimony that was provided was responsive to the question, but I will sustain the objection.
All right. When did you ask the defendant for a divorce?
I served him divorce papers 5 days after he was arrested.
And when was that?
He was arrested January 31st of 2018. So 5 days later, I asked for divorce.
All right. And when was the arrest, or when was, I'm sorry, the divorce final?
It was about June 20th of that year, so it was four months later.
Okay. And you said that the defendant had been arrested in what jurisdiction was he arrested?
Cobb County.
Did you post his bond?
No. No.
Okay. Who posted his bond?
His mother.
Your Honor, this time I move to admit State's Exhibit 83, which is a certified copy of the defendant's bond paperwork from March of 2018.
Any objection?
Objection.
Your Honor, may the jury see well, I think I can.
Yes. Hold on.
I'm going to show the jury the State's Exhibit 83, which is that bond paperwork. Do you know the amount of the bond?
I don't remember. I know it was a lot, and I know she put up her house.
I'm going to zoom in. All right, Ms. Minicozy, what was your relationship with Shirley Merritt like?
Well, she was my mother-in-law, and I included her as part of our immediate family because she was so close to my children. Her grandchildren were her entire world. She was at birthdays and baseball games and band concerts, and we talked to her a lot. We were together for holidays and birthdays, etc.
Okay. And did you maintain a relationship with Shirley after you divorced the defendant?
I stayed in contact with her, yes.
And why did you communicate with her as often?
No.
Okay. Did you visit her at her home in the Smoke Rise area?
Yes, I did. I would bring the kids over there to see her, and I did go over there and see her.
Did you maintain what you would consider to be a good relationship with Shirley?
I was polite to her, but our relationship became strained during that time because she did not want me to divorce Richard and was very adamant about it, and we used to argue about it. So.
Okay. And I mean, were these big arguments, or I mean, how did that play out?
I didn't have big arguments with her. We had a lot of terse conversations that were contentious. I never fought with her. I always treated her with love because I did love her.
Okay. And after the divorce, did you maintain any kind of relationship or contact with the defendant?
I did have contact with him because I was letting him see my daughter almost every Sunday.
Would you consider Shirley to be a good grandmother?
Yes, she was the best grandmother. She was the best grandmother.
And did she cook?
Yes.
Any specialties?
She was a very good cook. I think I would say her specialty would be Southern soul food, which everybody really loved. Her desserts were really good.
Well, let me back up to this. Were there any special meals that she would cook for the defendant?
Yes. One of the favorite things that she made was her spaghetti and the sauce recipe, and I actually use that recipe myself to this day.
All right. What was the relationship between the defendant and his mother like?
Contentious. They argued a lot. She did a lot to help us, yet he wasn't always nice to her. He would get frustrated with her because he thought she was too involved in our lives. a lot of the time.
What do you mean she would do a lot to help you?
She did so much to help us. She helped us buy a house when we were young. When we were first married, before Richard was an attorney, she helped us out financially because I was a student and we needed help paying our bills. And of course, like I said, she gave him the money he needed to start his firm.
And when the defendant was arrested, did he hire a defense attorney?
He did.
Okay. Do you know who paid for that?
Shirley paid for it.
Okay. Did you or the defendant owe Shirley any money at the time of her death?
I know he had borrowed money from her that he intended to pay back, but the understanding was he was never going to pay her back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear? You said that there was some contentiousness between the two of them. What, in general, were their arguments about?
Everything.
Okay.
Everything.
All right. And what was Shirley's reaction after learning that the defendant had committed these crimes against his clients?
Oh, gosh.
Without going into anything that she would have said.
Right. She was devastated. Okay. She was devastated that her son had been capable of hurting all those people. It ruined her life.
So the defendant was, where was the defendant living at that point?
After he was bonded out?
Yes.
With her. She took him in.
All right. And was he living with her up until the day of her death?
Yes.
The defendant was sentenced in Cobb County on January 18th of 2019. What was your relationship with him at that point?
I was still talking to him. He was still seeing the children, and we had made arrangements for him to say goodbye to the children before he was supposed to report. So we were still in contact with each other.
Did he ever discuss the charges with you?
Yes.
Okay. And what was his attitude toward them?
Jack Rollins.
Your Honor, I think it goes to the motive in this case. I think it goes to kind of his frame of mind during this entire time period and during the time that we are alleging that he killed Shirley.
I can't see where this witness can talk about his frame of mind.
I think she can talk about what she visually observed and what he told her during this time period.
What are you trying to elicit, Ms. Potts?
Your Honor, according to Janine, the defendant was, he never showed any kind of remorse. He was a bit flippant about the charges. I think this goes to the day of the crime. Our theory of the case is that he made the decision not to turn himself in. What we believe happened is that that's what the argument between he and his mother was about that day. We think that she was cooking him dinner. She was insistent that he do his time and do the right thing, but he didn't feel that that was something that was necessary.
But this witness wasn't present for any of that alleged discussion that took place that morning, so what personal knowledge would she have of what his state of mind was that day?
Well, we believe it was ongoing, that during, he that there was kind of the underlying question of whether he was going to turn himself in during this entire 2-week period.
And this witness has personal knowledge of that because why?
Well, she would just say that he didn't show any remorse.
To her?
What was that?
To her?
Correct. Never showed any remorse that she saw. She was kind of in the back when he entered his plea that day on January 18th.
But in this case, he's not charged with absconding from entering into prison that day. He's charged with a homicide. And I don't see how that's relevant to whether or not he committed this offense.
Okay. Well, we do believe that that was part of his motive in killing his mother. And his absconding was, he took her phone and her car and was trying to get out.
Okay. I don't think this witness is competent to testify to that. Okay. All right. If you bring your witness back in. Did you want to say anything else?
No, I think you did right on the head.
All right. And keep an eye on the time because we're going to stop right at 12.
Okay.
Y'all may be seated. Go ahead, Ms. Potter.
Thank you, Ms. Coatsy. Were you present
in the Cobb County Superior Court on January 18th, 2019, when the defendant entered his plea?
When he was sentenced, or when
Yeah.
he entered?
I'm sorry, when he was sentenced.
When he was sentenced. I came in at the very, very end to hear the verdict, and then I left.
Okay. And were you aware of what the sentence was?
Yes.
What was it?
15 served 30. I'm sorry, 30 served 15.
What were any parameters put on that?
That he had 2 weeks before he had to report to get his affairs in order.
Was he ordered to wear an ankle monitor?
Yes.
And during those 2 weeks, where was he living at the time?
At his mother's house.
Okay. And did you maintain communication with him during that 2 week period?
I did.
Okay. How often did you see him?
I talked to him frequently during that time because he wanted to get some affairs in order and see the children and say goodbye to the children.
And did he have the opportunity to say goodbye to the children?
He did.
When was that?
That was the Thursday night before, that was the night before the murder, Thursday night of that week. We met in a Starbucks parking lot and he said goodbye to both of the children.
And did you have a key to Shirley Merritt's house?
I did.
I went to discuss the events of February 1st, 2019. Did you see the defendant that day?
I did.
Where did you see him?
I saw him at my daughter's appointment. She had an appointment with her neurologist early that morning, and he met us there at the appointment, which was unusual.
And why? Well, first of all, why was that unusual?
Because for most of Mia's life, I went to all of her doctor appointments without him.
And was it planned that you would meet him at the doctor's appointment that day?
Yes, he said he was coming and he was going to meet me there, and I knew that there was a chance that he was going to come.
And did he in fact meet you there?
He did. He got there a little bit late, but he did come.
Okay, where approximately is the doctor's office?
Sandy Springs.
Okay, and is that somewhere off 285?
It's close off 285 near Children's Scottish Rite Hospital, that area.
Who were you with that day?
I was alone with Mia, with our daughter.
And do you remember what time the appointment was scheduled for?
It was around 9 or 9:30 in the morning, something like that. I don't remember exactly because of how much time it's been, but that was approximately the time of the appointment.
Do you remember whether he met you there on time?
No, he was late.
Okay. And do you remember about what time he did meet you?
It was after the appointment had begun. Like I said, so much time has passed. I don't remember the exact time of the appointment, but it was 9-ish in the morning, and he showed up after we were already with the doctor and the appointment had started.
What was he driving?
The Honda that Shirley had bought for him to drive while he was living with her.
What color was that Honda?
It was black.
And can you describe his appearance that day?
He had a shaved head and a goatee.
And is that his normal appearance? Is that how he normally...
That's how he had looked for quite some time.
Okay, and how did he act during that appointment?
His demeanor was very strange.
How so?
He didn't speak. He didn't look at anyone. He didn't talk to me or the doctor. He had an aura of... It's hard to describe. He was either very angry or...
And I'm not going to ask you to speculate as to how he was feeling. Just what you...
He was quiet. He was very quiet and didn't look at... I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Okay.
He was very quiet and didn't look at anybody or say anything.
Okay. Did this seem unusual to you?
Yes.
And did he ever say anything to you about turning himself in that afternoon?
At that appointment, no, I don't believe he did.
Did he actually go into where the appointment took place with you?
Yes, he met me in there.
And how long did the appointment last?
It was very brief. It was a 10 to 15 minute appointment that was very routine.
And did you all leave the appointment at the same time?
We did not.
Okay. What happened?
The doctor offered...
Okay, without saying what was said.
Right. We did not leave the appointment at the same time. I believe he left before me, and the doctor escorted me out to my car.
Did you hear from the defendant after that?
No.
Okay. Did you ever talk to Shirley that day?
I did not talk to her that day.
When was the last time you spoke to her?
The night before.
And what was that conversation like?
Well, she was upset about the events, and we had spoken for a couple of days about her making plans for Mike Jeffcoat to come and drive Richard to jail.
Okay. And in your opinion, was that an appropriate plan?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because Shirley was way too upset to drive him herself.
Okay. Is you knowing Shirley, is that something that she would have agreed to?
Yes.
And after that, I'm sorry, you said that you last spoke to Shirley the day before the 1st of February, so January 31st. Did you ever hear from her after that?
No.
Did you ever reach out to her after that?
I did try to get in contact with her later in the afternoon on Friday.
Okay, why is that?
I believe my son had a band concert that night that she was going to meet us at, and that's one of the reasons we were looking for her, because we didn't hear from her, and we knew she was going to be there.
Okay. So after, I want to kind of talk about what happened after Mia's appointment. Did you leave and go home after that?
Yes.
All right. And what happened? In terms of hearing from Shirley or the defendant?
I didn't hear from either of them again.
All right.
At that point.
Did you learn that the defendant did not turn himself into the jail as ordered?
I did.
When did you learn that?
I learned that at 5:30. David Willingham, his lawyer, called me to see if I had heard from him because he did not report.
Okay. And what did you do at that point?
Gathered together with my family and went as fast as we could to pick up my son where he was at the band concert.
Why did you do that?
Because we were worried about Richard being missing and Jack being away from us.
Okay. What were you worried about?
We were worried about what Rich might do.
Okay. And did you said you reached out to Shirley. Do you remember about what time that was?
We called her several times that evening.
And who's we?
We, me, my parents, and I don't know if Mike reached out to her, I'm sure.
Okay, were you in communication with Mike as well?
Not that day.
Okay. When did you talk to Mike?
Saturday, the next morning.
Okay, and did you go to Shirley's house on February 1st?
The day that she was murdered?
Yes.
No, I went to Shirley's house the next day.
Okay, and what was the purpose of that?
To check on her because we hadn't heard from her and we were very worried that something had happened.
Okay. Did you go with anyone?
Yes. My dad drove me to Shirley's house because I had the key, and we met Mike Jeffcoat there. We met there together so that we could check on her because we were worried that we hadn't heard from her.
What is your father's name?
Salvatore Minicosi.
Does he go by Sal?
He does.
And what happened when you met Mike Jeffcoat there?
We arrived at her house at the same time, and he said he offered to go in first, and I waited outside in the car with my father.
What happened? after that, did you see Mike go into the house?
I believe we were not. Mike called us. We were still in our car.
Okay.
And then Mike called us to tell us that she was dead in the house. And then he came outside and we talked to him. We saw him while he was waiting for the police.
So were you in a vicinity where you could see the house?
Yes, I was parked in the cul-de-sac right in front of the house.
Okay. And did you see Mike check the doors to the house?
Mike did that right before we had pulled up. We had been around the corner in the neighborhood.
All right. And did you see any cars in the driveway?
The Honda that Shirley had bought for Richard was there.
When you arrived at the house, do you remember, were you able to see whether the garage door was open or closed?
I don't remember. I was so upset at Shirley being dead in the house. I don't remember getting a look at the garage door.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that garage door. How would you be able to open and close it?
Well, with the remote, with the remote or the button, just as usual.
Was it one of those garage doors? I know that sometimes you can press the button and run out and it'll still close. Could you do that with that?
No.
Okay. Did you call 911 after learning that Shirley was dead?
Mike did.
Did you ever hear from the defendant that day?
No.
Okay. Did you work with the U.S. Marshal's office in their attempts to find the defendant over the next several months?
Yes, extensively.
Okay. Did you give them information about the defendant and where he might be?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any idea where he was?
No.
Did you ever hear from him in any way during the course of those months?
No.
And did he ever reach out to your children?
During the time that he was missing?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Do you recall when you learned that he was arrested?
Yes.
When was that?
That was 3 o'clock on the date of his arrest. The marshals called me to tell me.
What was your reaction?
I know I started screaming relief, extreme relief that he had been caught finally.
Why were you relieved?
Because we were so scared during the whole time that he was gone that he might come after us or hurt us.
Okay.
Because his behavior had been so scary at the time that we last saw him.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go ahead and take our lunch break now. I'm going to ask you all to please be back at 1 p.m. You will meet the deputy out in front of 7A at the other end of the hallway, just to make sure that you don't come into contact with any of the parties or witnesses in this case. Please remember the instruction not to talk about the case or allow anyone to talk to you about the case. You're free to bring back any beverages that you want into the courtroom, no alcoholic beverages, but anything that you'd like to have in the courtroom you can bring back after lunch, okay? Have a nice lunch. See you all at 1 o'clock. Thank you. Ms. Minicozy, you're excused. Just don't discuss your testimony with anyone. Sure. Thank you.
You're listening to the trial of Richard Merritt from the Hidden Killers podcast on the True Crime Today network. Press subscribe now and get ad-free episodes by upgrading to our premium experience through Apple Podcasts. More next.